The wedding invitation arrives on a Monday, slipped through the mail slot like a blade between ribs. I hear it hit the hardwood floor from my kitchen table, where I'm grading piano exercises and drinking coffee that's gone cold. The sound is crisp, final. The kind of sound that divides time into before and after. I don't rush to pick it up. I know what it is before I see it. The cream envelope, thick and expensive. The careful script of my own name written in unfamiliar handwriting. I've been expecting this moment for months, dreading it like a dentist appointment I keep rescheduling in my mind. When I finally walk over and lift the envelope, my hands are steadier than I expected. Muscle memory from years of opening Christmas cards and birthday wishes. But this isn't celebration. This is ceremony. This is the formal conclusion of something that was never supposed to begin. The names are printed in gold lettering that catches the weak February light filtering through my apartment windows. Evan Michael Shepard and Rebecca Lynn Hartley. I read them twice, then a third time, as if the letters might rearrange themselves into something less permanent. But they don't. They sit there, elegant and immovable, requesting the honor of my presence at their union in holy matrimony. There's a note handwritten at the bottom in Evan's blocky, familiar script. The same handwriting that used to pass me folded papers during Sunday school. The same careful letters that spelled out late-night confessions and text messages I never deleted. Hope you can make it, it says. Would mean a lot. And then just the initial, E. I placed the invitation on the windowsill next to my dead basil plant. The one I bought 3 months ago with good intentions and promptly forgot to water. Its brown leaves curl inward like praying hands, and I think there's something fitting about that. Something honest about the way neglected things wither in plain sight. Then I sit down on the floor. Not on the couch, which would make sense. Not at the kitchen table where my work waits. Just there on the hardwood, with my back against the wall and my knees drawn up. And I don't move for an hour. The apartment settles around me. The radiator clanks its familiar rhythm. Somewhere upstairs, Mrs. Chun plays her morning television too loud. The coffee shop below me fills with the usual Monday crowd, their voices rising and falling like waves against a distant shore. Life continues its relentless forward motion while I sit motionless, holding time like water in cupped palms. I think about how simple it would be to not go, to find an excuse, send a gift, let this chapter close without witnessing its final pages. But even as the thought forms, I know I won't take that path. Because this invitation isn't really asking me to celebrate. It's asking me to bear witness. To see what we've chosen, what we've sacrificed, what we've let slip away in the name of safety and expectation. The memory comes without invitation, vivid and unwelcome. A year earlier. The back steps of Calvary Baptist, concrete cold against our bodies even through winter coats. Youth group had ended an hour ago, but neither of us wanted to go home. We sat there sharing a cigarette like guilty children, our breath visible in the February night. Evan spoke first, his voice low and nervous in the way it always became when we were alone. You ever feel like there's just things you're never supposed to say? He asked. Like you'd lose everything if you did. I didn't answer right away. I was watching the way the broken porch light cast shadows across his face, making him look older and younger at the same time. Making him look like a stranger. Making him look like home. I don't even tell her the real stuff, he continued, quieter now. Not like I tell you. Rebecca. Even then, a year before their engagement, she was already the unspoken presence in our conversations. The inevitable future we both pretended not to see approaching. The life he was expected to live. The role he was born to play. I remember feeling something crack open in my chest at those words. Something dangerous and necessary. The sensation of being chosen and condemned in the same breath. Because what he was telling me wasn't just confession. It was invitation. It was the first recognition of what we both knew but couldn't name. We finished the cigarette in silence. He left first, like he always did. Walked to his car without looking back, leaving me alone on those church steps with the taste of tobacco and possibility burning in my throat. That moment never left me. It lived in the space between my ribs, in the pause before I answered his phone calls, in the careful distance I maintained when we stood too close. It was the thing we built our friendship around, and the thing that would eventually tear it apart. Now, sitting on my apartment floor with his wedding invitation balanced on the windowsill, I understand that this is how love sometimes works. Not with grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but with quiet confessions on church steps. With the slow recognition of what you mean to someone and what they mean to you. With the terrible understanding that meaning something and having something are not the same thing at all. The coffee shop customers have changed shifts. The morning rush replaced by afternoon lingerers. My legs have gone numb from sitting in the same position, but I don't move. I just stare at that invitation, at those gold letters spelling out someone else's future, and let the weight of memory settle over me like snow. I am 29 years old, and I teach piano to children who still believe in magic. 8 students, scattered throughout the week at Riverside Arts Academy, a converted Victorian house on the edge of town where the paint peels in long strips and the radiators sound like ghosts in the walls. My studio is on the 2nd floor, overlooking a creek that runs brown after heavy rain and clear on the rare days when the world feels washed clean. The children come to me with soft hands and eager questions. They want to know why some keys make sad sounds and others make happy ones. I tell them it's not the keys that hold emotion, but the spaces between them, the silence that gives meaning to the noise. They nod solemnly, as if they understand something their parents have forgotten. I live alone in the apartment above Groundwork Coffee, where Sarah Chun makes the best scones in 3 counties and never asks why I sometimes sit at the corner table for hours, staring at my phone like it holds answers I'm afraid to find. The apartment came furnished with furniture that looks like it was chosen by someone's grandmother in 1987. Floral patterns in dark wood, lace curtains that filter the light into something soft and forgiving. My windows fog in winter, and the floorboards creak like they're remembering something they can't quite name. Sometimes, late at night, I hear the building settling around me and imagine it's the sound of all the conversations that have happened within these walls. All the secrets whispered, all the hearts broken, all the prayers sent up through the ceiling like smoke. This town raised me the way rivers carve canyons, slowly and with absolute certainty. I was born into Calvary Baptist Church the same way some people are born into money or tragedy, not casually, but as a fundamental truth about who I was expected to become. Sunday morning worship, Sunday evening service, Wednesday night Bible study, youth group on Fridays. My weeks were measured in hymns and scripture memory verses, in the careful choreography of faith performed for an audience of believers. My mother sang in the choir for 37 years. My father served as a deacon until he died of a heart attack when I was 16, clutching his chest in the church parking lot after a particularly heated board meeting about carpet colors. The sanctuary was where I learned to play piano, where I first understood that music could be a form of prayer, where I discovered that some truths are too dangerous to speak aloud. I left at 21, 3 months after graduation from the small Christian college 2 hours south, where I studied music education and learned to ask questions that had no safe answers. I didn't make a scene. I didn't write letters or stage confrontations. I simply stopped showing up. Moved to Asheville, taught lessons at a music store, dated a graduate student named Marcus who played guitar and read poetry, and never once asked me to explain my relationship with God. For 6 years, I built a different life. I learned to drink wine without guilt, to sleep in on Sundays, to love someone without asking permission from doctrine or tradition. I thought I had escaped. I thought the boy who used to hide behind hymns was someone I could leave behind like outgrown clothes. But you can't unlearn the language of your childhood, and you can't unfeel the presence of something larger than yourself just because you disagree with how others define it. I never stopped believing in God. I just stopped believing that God wanted me broken. Stopped believing that love was something to be rationed and regulated, doled out only to those who fit the proper mold. Then my mother had her second stroke, and the life I had carefully constructed crumbled like a house built on shifting ground. Marcus drove me home, held my hand in the hospital waiting room, promised he would visit soon. We both knew he wouldn't. Long-distance relationships require a kind of faith neither of us possessed. I've been back for 2 years now. 27 when I returned, 29 as I sit in this apartment reading wedding invitations and wondering how someone can feel simultaneously stuck and lost. The town sees me as the prodigal son who came home but never quite repented. I teach their children and pay my rent on time and nod politely when they ask about my relationship status. But I exist in the liminal space between the man I almost became and the boy they remember. And Evan? Evan never left. He's the youth pastor at Calvary Baptist now, the golden boy who fulfilled every prophecy spoken over him in the church nursery. Tall and broad-shouldered, with the kind of smile that makes middle-aged women volunteer for committees and teenage girls develop hopeless crushes. He leads worship with a voice that sounds like honey over gravel, organizes mission trips to Appalachian communities that make our own town look metropolitan, shovels elderly widows' driveways without being asked. He is everything our childhood Sunday school teachers prayed he would become. Gentle, charismatic, completely devoted to the calling they saw in him before he could even tie his own shoes. The congregation loves him the way parents love a child who exceeds their wildest expectations. He is living proof that their faith produces good fruit, that their prayers are heard, that God still raises up leaders in small towns where everyone knows everyone's business. Except when it's just us. Late-night drives through back roads that lead nowhere, parking lots after worship practice when everyone else has gone home, text messages sent at 1 in the morning that say things like "I can't breathe tonight," or "Do you think it's wrong to wonder?" In those moments, he is not the youth pastor or the golden boy or the man everyone expects him to be. He is just Evan, the same person who used to sit beside me on church steps and confess that some truths felt too heavy to carry alone. I have kept every one of those messages. Screenshots saved in a folder I've never named. Digital evidence of a friendship that exists in the spaces between public perception and private truth. They arrive at random intervals, always when I least expect them, always when I most need them. Brief glimpses into the interior life of someone who has learned to carry his questions like stones in his pockets, heavy and hidden and always present. The last one came 3 weeks ago, just after midnight on a Thursday. It simply said, "Sometimes I feel like I'm drowning in other people's expectations." No response required, no answer expected. Just a voice in the darkness, reaching across the careful distance we maintain, reminding me that I am not the only one who feels caught between who I am and who I'm supposed to be. I didn't reply that night, but I wanted to. I wanted to tell him that expectations are just another word for fear, that drowning is what happens when you forget how to float. Instead, I saved the message with all the others and went to sleep wondering what it costs to be everyone's answer while carrying questions of your own. Now, with his wedding invitation propped against my windowsill, I understand that those late-night messages were not just friendship. They were lifelines thrown across an impossible distance. They were the sound of someone calling out from the other side of the life he chose, the life that chose him, the life that has always been inevitable and inescapable as gravity itself. The engagement announcement appears on my phone screen during lunch on a Tuesday, wedged between a recipe video I'll never make and a political meme I don't understand. Facebook's algorithm has decided this is important enough to show me first, before I've even finished my sandwich or prepared myself for the inevitable. The photo stops my breath mid-swallow. Evan and Rebecca in a field of sunflowers. The golden light of late summer making everything look like a movie poster for the kind of love story I'll never be part of. She's crying, her hands pressed to her mouth in that universal gesture of overwhelming joy. He's down on one knee in khakis and a button-down shirt, looking up at her with an expression I recognize but have never seen directed at me. The ring catches the light. The sunflowers tower over them like witnesses. The caption reads simply, "She said yes," with a heart emoji and a Bible verse about two becoming one flesh. Already, 312 people have liked it. The comments are filling with congratulations and scripture references and wedding emojis that look cheerful and violent at the same time. I close the app without scrolling further. Set my phone face down on the kitchen table next to my half-eaten turkey sandwich and try to remember how to breathe normally. This is not a surprise. I have been expecting this moment for months, maybe years. Rebecca has been part of Evan's life since they were teenagers, the kind of steady, inevitable love that grows up in small towns like kudzu, slow, and then all at once. But expecting something and experiencing it are different creatures entirely. Expectation is theoretical, a distant storm you watch approaching from the safety of your porch. Experience is the moment the rain starts falling, when you realize you've been standing outside all along. I finish my lunch methodically, tasting nothing. I grade 3 more piano assignments, marking time signatures and fingering positions with the same mechanical precision I use to fold laundry or pay bills. I teach my afternoon lessons as if nothing has changed, because nothing has changed, because everything has changed, because I am 29 years old and still learning that some kinds of loss happen in broad daylight, while children practice scales in rooms that smell like old wood and broken dreams. 8-year-old Emma plays Fur Elise with the concentration of a surgeon, her tongue poking out between her lips as she navigates the tricky passages. I sit beside her on the piano bench, our shoulders touching, and wonder if she can feel the way my chest has become a hollow drum, echoing with each heartbeat. "You're sad today, Mr. Silas," she says when she finishes, looking at me with the unsettling perceptiveness of children who haven't yet learned to pretend they don't see everything. I tell her I'm just tired. She nods solemnly, as if exhaustion is something she understands completely. Maybe she does. Maybe we're all more tired than we admit, carrying weights we can't name through days that require us to pretend we're lighter than we are. That evening, I do something I haven't done in months. I open a bottle of wine. Red wine from a vineyard in Virginia that I bought on a whim during a weekend trip to Richmond, back when weekend trips were still possible, back when I could imagine a future that extended beyond the boundaries of this small town and its careful expectations. I pour a glass, then another. I sit on my couch in the apartment above the coffee shop and tell myself I'm fine. I repeat it like a mantra, like a prayer, like a lie I'm trying to convince myself to believe. I'm fine. This is fine. Everything is exactly as it should be. The wine tastes like regret and possibility, bitter and sweet in equal measure. I drink it slowly, watching the light fade from my windows, listening to the sounds of a Tuesday evening settling over the town like a familiar blanket. Somewhere, Evan is celebrating. Somewhere, Rebecca is calling her mother and her sister and her college roommates, her voice bright with the kind of joy I will never be the source of for anyone. I fall asleep on the couch with the empty wine glass balanced on my chest, my phone still face down on the coffee table where I left it hours ago. I dream of sunflower fields and wedding rings and conversations that end before they begin. A week passes in careful normalcy. I teach my lessons, visit my mother at the assisted living facility where she now lives since her mobility declined, buy groceries, pay rent, exist in the space between heartbreak and healing that feels like holding your breath underwater. I don't check Facebook. I don't text Evan congratulations. I don't do anything that might betray the fact that his happiness has left me feeling like a ghost in my own life. Then, on the following Tuesday evening, exactly 7 days after the announcement, someone knocks on my apartment door. I'm not expecting anyone. Sarah from downstairs sometimes brings me leftover pastries, but she usually just leaves them outside my door with a note. My mother's aide would call if there were problems. I have no friends who drop by unannounced, no romantic entanglements that might result in surprise visits. When I open the door, Evan is standing in my hallway, hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets, looking like he's been walking for hours. His hair is disheveled. His eyes are bright with something that might be panic or excitement or the kind of desperation that comes from making decisions you can't unmake. He says he just needed air. Says he was driving around and found himself here, as if my apartment building is a destination you arrive at by accident. He asks if I want to go for a drive, his voice carrying the same nervous energy I remember from our childhood when he was working up the courage to ask for something he wasn't sure he deserved. I should say no. I should congratulate him, invite him in for coffee, ask about wedding plans like a normal friend would do. I should protect both of us from whatever this is, this late-night visit that feels like confession and temptation wrapped in the familiar package of his presence. Instead, I grab my jacket and follow him downstairs. His truck idles in the parking lot behind the coffee shop, exhaust visible in the cold February air. We drive without speaking through streets I could navigate blindfolded, past the high school, past the church, past all the landmarks of our shared history. The radio plays soft country music that sounds like heartbreak set to melody, and I wonder if he chose this station deliberately, or if sorrow is just what fills the silence when two people are avoiding the conversation they came here to have. We end up at the old quarry on the outskirts of town, the place teenagers go to drink beer and make promises they can't keep. The water is black and still in the moonlight, reflecting stars like scattered coins. We park near the edge and sit with the engine running, the heater blowing warm air that smells like his cologne and my own carefully contained panic. "Do you ever think about what we'd be like if we hadn't grown up in that church?" he asks suddenly, his voice cutting through the quiet like a stone thrown into deep water. The question lands in my chest with surprising weight. I know what he's really asking, what we're both thinking about in this truck overlooking dark water in the middle of a Tuesday night. He's asking about alternate versions of ourselves, about the men we might have become if we'd been born into different families, different towns, different certainties about who we were allowed to love. I try not to, I tell him, because it's the truth and because lies feel impossible in this moment, suspended between earth and sky, between friendship and something more dangerous. He nods like he expected that answer, like he knows the cost of wondering about roads not taken, paths not chosen, lives not lived. We sit in silence for a moment, watching our breath fog the windows, creating a temporary barrier between us and the world outside. Then he says something that changes everything, his voice so quiet I almost miss it over the sound of the heater and my own heartbeat. "I tell her I love her," he says, "but I never tell her the things I tell you." I turn to look at him, and in the dashboard light, he looks younger and older than his 29 years. He looks like the boy who used to sit beside me on church steps, and like a stranger I'm meeting for the first time. His eyes are fixed on the water, as if he's afraid to see my reaction, afraid to witness the moment his words take root in the space between us. "Why?" I ask, though I think I already know the answer. Though I think we both know why some truths can only be spoken in darkness, why some confessions require the safety of distance and the promise of plausible deniability. He doesn't answer right away. Maybe he can't. Maybe the answer is too big for words, too complicated for the careful vocabulary we've learned to use when talking around the edges of what we really mean. When he finally speaks, it's not an answer at all. It's just another question, another stone thrown into the black water of everything we've left unsaid. "Do you think that makes me a terrible person?" he asks. And I know, sitting there in his truck with my heart beating against my ribs like a caged bird, that this isn't over. That whatever we've been building in late-night text messages and careful distances and the space between confession and action is about to become something we can't take back. I know that some conversations change you just by happening, and that we've already crossed a line we didn't know existed until we were standing on the other side of it, looking back at who we used to be before this moment taught us who we really are. The meetings begin 3 days later. Not planned, not scheduled, but inevitable in the way water finds cracks in concrete. Evan texts at 11:30 on a Friday night. Just 2 words. "You awake?" I am, sitting at my kitchen table grading assignments that could wait until morning, drinking tea that's gone cold while I pretend I'm not waiting for something I can't name. I text back, always. "Come up." He arrives 15 minutes later, still wearing his youth group t-shirt and the kind of jeans that youth pastors wear to prove they're relatable. His hair is messed from driving with the windows down, and he carries the February cold in his jacket like a familiar scent. We don't talk about the quarry. We don't mention Rebecca or engagement rings or the conversation that left us both feeling like we'd swallowed something sharp. Instead, we sit on my couch and talk about music. He tells me about a song he heard on the radio that made him think about mortality. I play him a piece I've been working on, something melancholy and unfinished that sounds like questions without answers. We drink coffee even though it's late, even though caffeine will keep us both awake long after he leaves. even though staying awake feels safer than dreaming about things we're not supposed to want. He stays until 2 in the morning. When he leaves, I realize I've been holding my breath for 3 hours. The pattern establishes itself without discussion. Tuesday nights, sometimes Thursdays, once on a Sunday after evening service when he shows up still wearing his dress shirt and tie, looking like he's escaped from somewhere he was never supposed to be in the first place. Always late, always unplanned, always with the same text, "You awake?" I start keeping a second toothbrush in the drawer of my bathroom cabinet. Blue, still in the package, purchased during a grocery run when I wasn't paying attention to what I was putting in my cart. I tell myself it's practical, that everyone should have a spare toothbrush for guests. I don't examine why I chose blue, why it matches his eyes, why I sometimes open the drawer just to look at it and imagine a world where he might need it. We talk about everything and nothing. The future, which feels like a country neither of us knows how to navigate. Fear, which we both carry like stones in our pockets, heavy and familiar and always present. Music, which becomes our safe language, the vocabulary we use when words feel too dangerous. Theology, which we approach like archaeologists examining artifacts from a civilization we're not sure we still belong to. He tells me about the sermon he's preparing for Easter, how he wants to talk about resurrection, but keeps getting stuck on the part about dying first. I tell him about my student Emma, how she started composing her own songs, little melodies that sound like childhood and hope and all the things we lose when we learn too much about how the world actually works. Some nights we sit closer than others. On the couch, our thighs almost touching. At my kitchen table, sharing a cup of coffee I've made too strong. Sometimes his hand brushes mine when he reaches for his keys, when he gestures while talking, when he leans forward to make a point. The contact lasts longer each time. His fingers linger against my wrist when he hands me his empty mug. My shoulder stays pressed against his when we look at something on my phone together. He always pulls away first, but slower each time, as if his body is arguing with his mind about what's appropriate, what's safe. What's allowed between two men who grew up in a church that taught them to fear their own hearts? 3 weeks into this new rhythm, he arrives at my door different. Quieter, more fragile, like he's been carrying something too heavy for too long. We sit on my couch in the lamplight, and I can feel the weight of whatever he's brought with him settling into the space between us like fog. I feel split in half all the time, he says suddenly, staring at his hands. Like there's a version of me that's starving, and I keep pretending he doesn't exist. His voice breaks slightly on the word starving, and I feel something crack open in my chest. This is confession in its truest form, not the sanitized version we learned in Sunday school, but the raw acknowledgement of hunger, of need, of all the parts of ourselves we've been taught to deny. I don't try to fix it. I learned long ago that some pain isn't looking for solutions, just witness. I sit beside him in the yellow light of my living room lamp and let his words settle into the air like seeds finding soil. Tell me about him, I say quietly. The starving version. Evan laughs, but it sounds like crying. He likes music that makes people uncomfortable. He asks questions that don't have clean answers. He thinks about what it would be like to disappear for a while, just to see who would actually miss him versus who would miss what he does for them. He pauses, swallows hard. He wonders what it would feel like to be touched by someone who doesn't need him to be anything other than what he is. The words hang between us like a bridge neither of us knows how to cross. I feel the urge to reach for him, to close the distance that's been growing and shrinking between us for weeks now. Instead, I stay still, let the silence hold what words can't carry. You know what the worst part is, he continues, his voice barely above a whisper. I've started looking forward to being him. To these conversations, to feeling like I can breathe for a few hours. And that terrifies me because I don't know what happens when I have to go back to being the other version. I understand this fear in my bones. The exhaustion of performing yourself, of wearing a costume that never quite fits, of smiling when you want to scream, and saying yes when everything in you wants to say no. I lived it for 21 years before I found the courage to leave, and I'm living it again now. Differently, but just as completely. On a Thursday night in early March, something shifts. Evan arrives more agitated than usual, pacing my living room like a caged animal, running his hands through his hair in the gesture I've learned means he's fighting with himself about something he can't say out loud. I made Rebecca cry today, he tells me, still pacing. She was talking about wedding plans, showing me pictures of flowers on her phone, and I couldn't pretend to care. She asked me what was wrong, and I told her I was tired. She said I've been tired a lot lately. He stops moving, stands with his back to me, looking out my window at the empty street below. She's not wrong. I am tired. I'm exhausted from pretending that planning our future feels like joy instead of suffocation. This is the closest he's come to naming what's happening between us, to acknowledging that these late-night visits aren't just friendship, aren't just two old friends catching up. We both know that what he's really saying is that he can't bring himself to care about wedding flowers because he's falling in love with someone else. With me. But he doesn't say it directly, and I don't push him to. Some truths are too dangerous to speak aloud, too fragile to survive in the harsh light of acknowledgement. So instead, I stand up and move to where he's standing by the window. I place a hand on his shoulder, feel the tension in his muscles, the way he's holding himself like he might shatter if he relaxes for even a moment. He turns around, and we're closer than we've ever been. Close enough that I can see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, can smell his cologne and the faint scent of the lavender fabric softener Rebecca uses on his clothes. Close enough that if either of us moved forward 6 inches, everything would change forever. We don't move forward, but we don't move away either. We stand there in my living room, the space between us charged with everything we're not saying, everything we're not doing, everything we want but can't have. My hand is still on his shoulder. His eyes are fixed on mine with an intensity that makes my breath catch. This is the moment that will replay in my mind for months afterward. Not the moment we crossed the line, but the moment we stood at the edge of it and chose to stay suspended there, caught between desire and fear, between what we want and what we know is possible. After what feels like hours but is probably only seconds, he steps back. My hand falls to my side. The spell breaks, but the memory of it lingers in the air between us like smoke. One night in late March, Evan arrives at my door and immediately collapses onto my couch, his face in his hands. I don't ask what's wrong. I just sit beside him and wait. The way you wait for storms to pass, with patience and the quiet faith that eventually the wind will calm. When he finally looks up, his eyes are red. I don't know who I am anymore, he says. I look in the mirror and see someone I don't recognize. I hear myself talking in youth group about God's plan and living authentically, and I feel like a fraud. He laughs bitterly. How do you live authentically when you don't know who you authentically are? When every version of yourself feels like a performance? I don't have answers for him. I'm still figuring out the same questions, still learning how to be myself in a town that remembers me as someone else. But I know something about the space between who you are and who you're expected to be. I know something about the weight of carrying secrets that feel too big for your body. So I do the only thing I can think of. I place my hand on his knee, let it rest there with all the gentleness I can manage, and let the silence be enough. He doesn't pull away. His breathing slows. Some of the tension leaves his shoulders. We sit like that for a long time, my hand on his knee, his eyes closed, both of us existing in a moment that feels stolen from time. We don't touch beyond that. Don't kiss, don't hold each other, don't cross any of the lines we've been dancing around for weeks. But something undeniable is building between us, something that grows stronger with each late-night conversation, each lingering glance, each moment of almost contact that leaves us both aching for more. We don't name it, can't name it, because naming it would make it real, and real things break. Real things have consequences. Real things require choices that neither of us is ready to make. So we exist in the unnamed space, in the territory between friendship and love, between what we want and what we can have. We meet in the darkness of my apartment and talk about everything except the one thing that matters most. We sit close enough to touch, but maintain the careful distance that keeps us safe from ourselves. And every night when he leaves, I stand at my window and watch his taillights disappear into the darkness, carrying him back to the life he's chosen, the life that's chosen him. The life that doesn't include me except in these stolen moments when he lets himself be the starving version of himself, the one who asks dangerous questions and wants impossible things. I know this can't last. I know that something will have to give, that we can't exist in this liminal space forever. But for now, it's enough to have these nights, these conversations, these moments of almost touching that feel like the closest thing to love I've ever known. For now, it's enough to be the person he tells his secrets to, the one he comes to when he needs to remember who he might be if the world were different. It's enough to sit in the silence with him and let our unspoken truth hang in the air between us like a prayer we're both too afraid to say out loud. The bachelor party is on a Saturday night in April, and I know about it only because the entire town knows about it. Small towns don't keep secrets well, especially when those secrets involve the Golden Boy youth pastor celebrating his last night of freedom at Danny's Bar and Grill, the kind of establishment that serves wings and beer and pretends that good Christian men don't sometimes need to feel normal. I'm not invited, which surprises no one, least of all me. I exist in the margins of Evan's public life, the childhood friend who teaches piano and keeps to himself. The one people remember when they're trying to recall who used to sit with Evan in Sunday school, but who never quite belongs in the present tense of his story. I spend the evening grading compositions, small pieces my students have written about their favorite seasons, or their pets, or their dreams of becoming famous. Emma has written something called The Song of Lonely Trees, and it's surprisingly sophisticated for an 8-year-old, full of minor keys and unexpected chord progressions that sound like wisdom she's too young to possess. At 10:30, my phone buzzes. A text from Evan, sent from what I assume is the parking lot of Danny's, where his groomsmen are probably wondering where he's gone. I can't do this alone. For words that land in my chest like stones thrown into still water, sending ripples through everything I've been trying to keep calm and contained. I stare at the message until the screen goes dark, then lights up again when I touch it, as if I need confirmation that those words are real, that this moment is actually happening. I don't text back. Don't ask where he is, or what he means, or whether he's been drinking. I just leave my apartment door unlocked and wait. He arrives 20 minutes later, still wearing the button-down shirt his groomsmen probably chose for him, but with the sleeves rolled up and the collar open in a way that makes him look younger and more vulnerable than he has any right to be. His hair is disheveled. His eyes are bright with something that might be panic or clarity or the kind of desperate honesty that comes from standing at the edge of a cliff and realizing you can't go back. I let him in without a word. What is there to say? We both know why he's here, what this night means, what's about to happen in the space between his bachelor party and his wedding day. We sit on my couch, the same couch where we've spent so many nights talking around the edges of this moment. But tonight feels different. The air is heavier, charged with everything we've left unsaid, everything we've been building toward without admitting it to ourselves. He doesn't look at me at first, just stares at his hands, which are trembling slightly, and I wonder if it's from alcohol or adrenaline or the simple terror of being about to say something you can't take back. "Do you think I'm a coward?" he asks finally, his voice so quiet I have to lean forward to hear him. The question hangs between us like a confession, like an indictment, like a prayer he's not sure he believes in. I think about all the ways to answer it, all the gentle lies I could tell to make this easier for both of us. But we've moved beyond the place where gentle lies serve any purpose. "I think you're scared," I tell him. We all are. It's not the absolution he's looking for, but it's the truth. We're all scared of wanting things we can't have, of being people we're not supposed to be, of loving in ways that don't fit the molds others have made for us. Fear isn't cowardice. Fear is just the price we pay for caring about things that matter. He nods like he expected that answer, like he needed to hear it even though it doesn't solve anything. Then he looks at me for the first time since he walked through my door, and I see everything I've been trying not to see for months reflected in his eyes. "I think I love you," he says. Not loud, not proud, but with the desperation of someone who has been drowning and finally decided to stop fighting the current. The words fall into the space between us like stones into deep water, creating ripples that will spread outward long after this night, is over. My breath catches. Not from surprise, exactly, because some part of me has known this was coming, has been waiting for this moment through all our late-night conversations and careful distances and moments of almost touching. But knowing something and hearing it said aloud are different creatures entirely. He reaches out and touches my face, his hand shaking so slightly I might have imagined it if I weren't paying attention to every detail of this moment, cataloging it like evidence of something I never thought I'd be allowed to experience. His palm is warm against my cheek, calloused from the guitar he plays during worship, gentle in a way that makes my chest feel too small for my heart. Our foreheads rest together, and for a single suspended moment, the world holds still. I can feel his breath against my lips, can count his eyelashes, can hear the sound his heart makes when it beats too fast. We exist in the space between one heartbeat and the next, between the confession and whatever comes after, between the life he's chosen and the life he wants. We don't kiss. I want to. God help me. I want to more than I've ever wanted anything. I want to close the distance between us, to taste the words he's just spoken, to prove to both of us that this is real, that we're real, that love like this exists even when it's not supposed to. But I don't move forward, and neither does he. Because kissing would make this something we couldn't pretend never happened. Kissing would be a choice rather than a moment, a decision rather than an accident. And neither of us is ready for the weight of that choice. Instead, we just sit there with our foreheads touching, breathing the same air, existing in a bubble of almost that's more intimate than anything I've ever experienced. His hand stays on my face. My eyes stay closed, and everything between us unravels in the silence. I love you too, I whisper, because some truths are too big to keep inside, because he deserves to know that this feeling isn't one-sided, because I've been carrying these words for so long they've become part of my DNA. His breath hitches when I say it, and I feel rather than see the way his eyes close tighter, as if he's trying to memorize this moment before it becomes just another thing he has to carry in secret. We stay like that until the sun starts to rise, painting my apartment windows with soft pink light that makes everything look like watercolor. Neither of us speaks again. What is there to say after you've told someone you love them, and they've told you they love you back, and you both know it doesn't change anything? His wedding is in 6 days. The invitations have been sent, the flowers ordered, the cake decorated with their names in elegant script. Rebecca is probably at home right now, sleeping peacefully next to her wedding dress, dreaming about the life she's about to begin with the man she loves. The man who loves someone else. When the sunlight grows too bright to ignore, Evan pulls away slowly, like he's moving through water, like every inch of distance costs him something precious. He doesn't look at me as he stands up, doesn't say goodbye or make promises about what this means or what happens next. He just walks to my door, pauses with his hand on the handle, and speaks without turning around. I'm sorry, he says, and I know he's not apologizing for loving me. He's apologizing for all the ways this love will hurt us both, for the timing that makes it impossible, for the life he's about to choose that doesn't include me except in moments like this that we'll both have to pretend never happened. Then he's gone, and I'm alone in my apartment with the taste of almost on my lips and the weight of his confession settling into my bones like a song I'll never be able to forget. I sit on my couch as the morning light grows stronger, replaying every second of the last 8 hours. The way his voice cracked when he said my name. The warmth of his hand against my face. The moment when our foreheads touched and the entire world condensed down to the space between us. I know this is the closest we'll ever come to having what we want. I know that in 6 days, he'll stand at the altar and promise his life to someone else while I sit in my apartment and try to forget the sound he made when I told him I loved him too. But for 8 hours, we were real. For 8 hours, we existed in a world where love was enough, where wanting something made it possible, where two people could sit in the almost dawn and tell each other the truth without the sky falling down around them. It's not enough. It will never be enough. But it's what we have, and I'll carry it with me like a secret flame, like evidence that some kinds of love exist even when they can't survive, like proof that I was capable of being loved by someone who mattered, even if only for one night when the rest of the world was sleeping. 6 days. The wedding is in 6 days, and I move through my life like a ghost in a familiar house, touching nothing, changing nothing, leaving no evidence that I was ever here at all. I teach my piano lessons with the mechanical precision of someone who has forgotten how to feel music. I eat meals that taste like cardboard. I sleep in 2-hour intervals, waking each time from dreams I can't remember, but that leave me feeling like I've been running from something I'll never outpace. Evan doesn't text, doesn't call, doesn't appear at my door with desperate eyes and shaking hands. The silence stretches between us like a bridge that's been burned, leaving us stranded on opposite sides of what we admitted to each other in the almost dawn of Sunday morning. I don't reach out either. What would I say? That I love him. He already knows. That I want him to choose me. We both know that's impossible. That I understand why he can't. Understanding doesn't make it hurt less. Instead, I exist in the space between heartbreak and acceptance, between the man who believed in possibilities and the man who's learning to live with their absence. I water my dead basil plant out of habit, even though hope has long since left its brown leaves. I grade compositions about spring and new beginnings while feeling like I'm trapped in permanent winter. On Tuesday, my mother asks if I'm okay. We're sitting in the recreation room at Sunset Manor, where she's lived since her second stroke, made climbing stairs impossible and cooking for herself dangerous. She's working on a jigsaw puzzle of a lighthouse, her movements slow but determined, her mind still sharp enough to notice when her son is falling apart. "You look tired," she says without looking up from the puzzle pieces. "More tired than usual." I tell her I haven't been sleeping well. It's not a lie, exactly, but it's not the whole truth either. I haven't been sleeping well, or eating well, or breathing well, or existing well in the aftermath of a confession that changed everything and nothing simultaneously. She studies me with the kind of maternal radar that doesn't diminish with age or illness. Are you eating enough? Taking your vitamins? Getting enough fresh air? I want to laugh at the simple remedies she's prescribing for a condition she doesn't understand, can't understand, would probably be horrified to understand. "Yes, Mama," I tell her. "I'm taking care of myself." Another lie. I'm not taking care of myself. I'm barely surviving myself. I'm existing on coffee and the muscle memory of routine, moving through days that feel like walking underwater, everything muffled and slow and strange. She nods and returns to her puzzle, but I catch her watching me from the corner of her eye, the way mothers do when they know their children are hurting but don't know how to fix it. I want to tell her everything. Want to collapse into her lap the way I did when I was 7 and had scraped my knee, when a kiss and a Band-Aid could heal any wound. But some wounds are too complex for maternal remedies, and some truths are too dangerous to speak aloud in recreation rooms that smell like disinfectant and broken dreams. Wednesday passes. Thursday. Friday. Each day feeling longer than the last. Each sunset bringing me closer to Saturday afternoon, when Evan will stand at the altar of Calvary Baptist and promise his life to Rebecca while I sit in my apartment above the coffee shop and try to remember how to breathe without him. Friday evening, I make dinner and eat half of it. Watch a movie I don't follow. Take a shower that lasts too long because the hot water feels like the only thing keeping me tethered to my body. I go to bed at 9:30, knowing I won't sleep, knowing I'll lie awake counting hours until the moment when everything becomes irreversible. But sleep finds me anyway, probably from exhaustion, and I dream of sunflower fields and wedding rings and conversations that end before they begin. I wake Saturday morning to the sound of someone sliding an envelope under my door. For a moment, I think it might be Sarah from downstairs with a note about noise or packages or some other mundane apartment building concern. But when I pick up the envelope, I see my name written in Evan's careful handwriting, the same script that used to pass me notes during Sunday school, the same letters that signed the wedding invitation now propped against my windowsill. No return address, no stamp, just my name and the weight of whatever he's decided to tell me on the morning of his wedding day. My hands shake as I open it, and I realize this is the first time I've trembled since Sunday morning, the first time my body has responded to anything with more than mechanical indifference. Inside is a single sheet of cream-colored paper, folded once, covered with his familiar handwriting. Silas, it begins, and even that single word feels like a punch to the chest. I'm writing this at 4 in the morning because I can't sleep, and because I can't not sleep without telling you what I need you to know. I've started this letter 17 times, and nothing I write feels big enough for what I'm trying to say, but I have to try because in 12 hours I'll be married, and some doors close forever. I'm choosing the life I've always known. I can't undo everything, can't unwrite the vows already promised, can't disappoint everyone who has prayed for this day since Rebecca and I were teenagers holding hands in youth group. I can't be the person who breaks her heart because I finally found the courage to admit mine belongs somewhere else. But I need you to know that what I felt was real. What we shared in those late nights, in your living room, in the moments when I let myself be the starving version of myself, that was the most honest I've ever been with another human being. You are the truest mirror I've ever had, the only person who has seen me without my costume and didn't ask me to put it back on. I know this isn't fair to you. I know I'm asking you to carry the weight of my cowardice, to understand choices that I don't fully understand myself. I know that loving someone and leaving them is the cruelest combination of gift and abandonment. But I also know that if I don't do this, if I don't honor the commitments I've made and the life I've built, I'll destroy more than just myself. Rebecca doesn't deserve to be collateral damage in my journey toward authenticity. The church doesn't deserve to lose faith in someone they've invested so much hope in. Indiana. My family doesn't deserve the scandal of a runaway groom who couldn't make up his mind until it was too late. So I'm choosing the life that hurts the fewest people, even though it means hurting the person I care about most. I hope you forgive me someday. I don't know if I'll ever forgive myself. Thank you for showing me what it feels like to be known. Thank you for letting me be hungry in your presence. Thank you for loving me back, even though we both knew it couldn't change anything. You deserve someone who can choose you without question, without reservation, without the weight of 1,000 expectations making that choice impossible. You deserve someone brave enough to love you in daylight, not just in the stolen hours between midnight and dawn. I will carry what we shared for the rest of my life, not as a burden, but as proof that some kinds of love exist even when they can't survive. Be well, Silas. Be happy. Be the man you were always meant to be, not the man this town tried to make you. I read the letter 3 times before the words fully penetrate the fog of shock and grief that has descended over my brain. Then I fold it carefully, place it in the same envelope as the wedding invitation, and set both on my kitchen table next to the half-eaten dinner from last night. I should feel angry, should feel betrayed or abandoned or righteously indignant about being asked to understand choices that prioritize everyone else's comfort over our truth. But all I feel is a hollow sadness, the kind that settles into your bones and makes everything else feel distant and unreal. He's right, of course, about the commitments, about Rebecca, about the impossibility of choosing love over responsibility when you've spent your entire life being the person others need you to be. He's right, and I hate that he's right, and I love him for being honest about the cowardice that looks so much like wisdom from the outside. At 2 in the afternoon, while Evan is probably adjusting his tie and Rebecca is having her hair touched up by bridesmaids who are crying happy tears, I get in my car and drive to the old quarry. The same place where he asked me what we'd be like if we hadn't grown up in that church. The same edge where we sat with our legs dangling over dark water, talking about alternate versions of ourselves that felt like science fiction. The same spot where I first understood that some conversations change you just by happening. I park where his truck was that night and walk to the edge alone. The April afternoon is warm, the kind of spring day that promises summer and new beginnings and all the things I won't get to have with the person I love. Somewhere across town, organ music is playing and a congregation is rising to witness vows that will bind him to someone else forever. I stand at the quarry's edge and think about all the ways this story could have been different. If we'd been born into different families, different certainties, different definitions of what love is allowed to look like. If I'd been braver, if he'd been braver, if either of us had found the courage to want what we wanted without apologizing for it. But we are who we are, and this is the world we live in, and some stories don't get the endings they deserve. For the first time in months, I let myself cry without shame. Not the quiet tears of private grief, but the full-body sobs of someone whose heart is breaking in real time. I cry for the man I love who will never be mine, for the life we imagined in stolen moments, for the version of myself that believed love might be enough to overcome everything else. I cry until I'm empty, until the sun starts to set over the quarry and the wedding is over and Evan is dancing with his wife to a song I'll never hear without thinking of this moment. Then I drive home to my apartment above the coffee shop, where I'll learn to live with the weight of loving someone I can't have, someone who loves me back but chose safety over truth, someone who will carry what we shared like a secret flame for the rest of his life. And somehow, even in the midst of this ending, I know I'll be okay. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. Because love like this, even love that can't survive, changes you, makes you bigger, braver, more capable of truth than you were before. I'll carry him with me too, not as a burden, but as proof that I was capable of loving and being loved, even briefly, even impossibly, even in a world that had no room for what we were to each other. Weeks passed like water over stones, each day wearing away a little more of the sharp edges until what remains is smooth enough to hold without cutting myself. I teach my students. Make quiet dinners for one. Read poems out loud to myself when the apartment feels too empty, my voice the only sound besides the settling of old wood and the distant hum of the coffee shop below. There's a calm now that I didn't expect, a grief-laced stillness that isn't hollow the way I thought it would be. Emma plays Chopin now, her small fingers finding their way through nocturnes that sound like moonlight and memory. She asks why some music makes people cry even when it's beautiful, and I tell her that beauty and sadness often live in the same house, that the most honest songs are the ones that make room for both. She nods with the solemnity of someone who understands more than she should, and I wonder if all children carry this wisdom until the world teaches them to forget it. My mother notices the change when I visit on Thursday. "You seem different," she says, not looking up from her jigsaw puzzle of a garden in bloom. More settled, somehow. I help her find a piece of blue sky, fitting it into place with the satisfaction of small completions. Maybe I am, I tell her. Maybe I'm finally learning how to be where I am instead of somewhere else. She smiles at that, the kind of maternal approval that doesn't require explanation. Sometimes the best lessons come from the hardest teachers, she says, and I know she's not talking about piano instruction. I play late at night now, when the building is quiet and my music won't disturb anyone's sleep. Bach inventions that sound like mathematical prayers, Debussy that flows like water over my fingers, hymns from childhood that I'm finally old enough to understand. The sound drifts through my open windows into the April night, an offering to no one and everyone. One evening, I open the bathroom drawer and see the second toothbrush, still in its package, blue as his eyes, purchased with hope I didn't know I was carrying. I take it out, hold it for a moment like evidence of something that mattered, then walk to the kitchen and drop it in the trash. Not in anger, not in bitterness, in release. The gesture feels bigger than it should, like finally setting down a weight I'd grown so accustomed to carrying that I'd forgotten it wasn't part of me. I wash my hands afterward, though they're not dirty, and realize I'm smiling for the first time in weeks. Sunday evening, I text my mother that I won't be visiting until Tuesday because I have something to do. I don't tell her I'm planning to attend evening service at Calvary Baptist, the first time I've set foot in that sanctuary in 8 years. I don't tell her because I'm not sure I understand it myself. I slip in during the opening hymn and sit in the back row, anonymous in the dimmed lights and familiar faces I recognize but no longer belong to. Evan is at the piano, leading worship with the same voice that used to confess secrets in my living room, the same hands that touched my face in the almost dawn of his bachelor party. He's wearing his wedding ring, a simple gold band that catches the sanctuary lights when he gestures. He looks peaceful in a way that surprises me, settled into the life he chose with what appears to be genuine contentment. Rebecca sits in the front row, glowing with the particular radiance of new wives, her hands folded over what might be the beginning of their future together. I feel no anger watching them, no jealousy or resentment, or any of the bitter emotions I expected to carry. Instead, there's something that feels almost like gratitude, though I'm not sure what for. Maybe for the reminder that love takes many forms, that choosing someone doesn't diminish what you've felt for someone else, that the heart is large enough to hold multiple truths without breaking. During the closing prayer, Evan's eyes find mine across the sanctuary. We look at each other for perhaps 3 seconds, and in that brief connection, I see acknowledgement, sorrow, gratitude, and something that might be peace. Then he closes his eyes and bows his head, and I slip out before the final amen. Later that night, I sit at my piano bench with a soft candle burning beside me, its flame steady in the still air of my apartment. I play a hymn I learned as a child, Come Thou Fount, the one about being prone to wander, about grace that finds us even when we've lost our way. But tonight it sounds different than it did in childhood, when I sang it as duty rather than understanding. Tonight it sounds like truth, not the sanitized truth of Sunday school answers, but the complicated truth of lives lived in the space between what we want and what we choose, between who we are and who we're trying to become. I play it slowly, letting each note ring until it fades into silence before pressing the next key. The melody moves through the familiar progressions, but I find myself adding small variations, moments of dissonance that resolve into something sweeter than pure harmony. It sounds like forgiveness, though I'm not sure who I'm forgiving or for what. Maybe Evan, for choosing safety over risk. Maybe myself, for loving someone I couldn't have. Maybe the world, for being the kind of place where some loves can only exist in stolen moments between midnight and dawn. Mostly, it sounds like acceptance, like the recognition that some stories don't end the way we want them to, but they still matter. Like the understanding that loving someone, even briefly, even impossibly, changes you in ways that outlast the relationship itself. The candle burns lower as I play, casting shifting shadows on the walls of my apartment. Outside, the town sleeps with the contentment of a place where most stories have predictable endings, where most people marry their high school sweethearts and raise children who look like them and carry forward the same certainties their parents held. But some of us are different. Some of us carry questions instead of answers, love people we can't have, find beauty in the unfinished places where others see only incompletion. And that's okay too. I play until the candle burns out, until the only light comes from the street lamp outside my window, until my fingers know the melody so well they could continue without my conscious direction. Something beautiful and unfinished, like love, like life, like the man I'm still becoming in the quiet spaces between one song and the next.